Hey, long time no see. The interview is coming up in just a sec. It's with Rene Maric, who, trust me, is one of the best tactics writers out there and a coach right now at Red Bull Salzburg, so very interesting to listen to. But I want to use this time for 2 secs to update you on some stuff that's been going on. Number one, where I've been over the last few months. I was at Arsenal, then I did exams, then I was at Tech, who consults some top clubs which you can Google, then Brexit, then we got to the semis of the Euros, then I turned 21, then I made most of Manchester hate me through a video they definitely didn't watch properly, then I was at Man City for a coding competition where we really should have won, then I had exams again, then I announced I was joining Analytics FC, and now I'm at the IFS on the back of my Brexit video. Number two, what's coming? Football-wise, probably more of the same. I'm going into my final year of uni, so it'll still be sporadic, but I want to spend as much time as possible I can on any one video to make sure they're not crap. Politics and economics-wise, I probably want to make some more stuff, but we'll talk about that another time. Number three, what this is. As I said, I joined Analytics FC. You should really follow us on Twitter. We're putting together this podcast talking to some of the most interesting people in the professional game about all things football. You really should check us out on SoundCloud and Twitter, as I said. That's where we'll be putting up the podcast all the time, but I'll try and put as many as possible which feature me out on this channel. This one in particular features obviously me, Rene, who I spoke about earlier, and Jeremy, the MD at Analytics FC, who also worked at Stoke and Chelsea and West Ham, etc. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to this season's second instalment of the Analytics FC podcast. I'm Jeremy Steele and I'm joined as always by the infamous Messi Seconds, Joel Salomon.
It's good to be here.
Bobby Gardner, unfortunately, is not with us today, but instead we're joined by a fantastic guest in the form of tactical guru and coach at Red Bull Salzburg, Rene Maric.
Hello.
Rene, welcome. And for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So you know me, I'm writer at Spielverlagerung, German tactics blog, which expanded the last years into the English blogosphere. And I'm also doing coaching at Red Bull Salzburg in the academy, and did some analytical or position analyst for various clubs in Europe.
Okay, great. Could you give us a little bit of an insight then into what you're doing now, though? Obviously, Red Bull Salzburg, people may or may not know the story, so it'd be good to give a little bit of a background on the club, and then let us know a little bit about what you're doing now, what your role is, and what you do kind of day to day.
Since June, I'm at Red Bull. I'm assistant coach at the under-18, who are playing at the under-18s National League. Also, I'm assistant coach of the youth league team, which will be playing starting from next week on. First game is against Vardar Skopje from Macedonia. And I'm qualitative analyst for the whole academy. So these are my roles I have at Red Bull.
Okay, cool. So you're mixing both the on-field coaching with the analysis. How does that work? How do you interact with the coaching staff? Are you on pitch with them, or is it just more kind of reporting to them in terms of either on screen or with paper reports?
At Red Bull, every coach is by definition also an analyst in terms of his own team. So the teams get from the video analyst the videos and some data, and every coach watches his teams and uses the video for presentations. So I'm a regular coach. More or less, I'm always on the pitch. We were just planning training together, me and Marco, who's my head coach. And the coaching staff is the two of us. Goalkeeping coach, a fantastic conditioning coach, and physiotherapist. Yeah, that's the stuff we have for the under-18s.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, look, the first question really we wanted to delve into your beliefs in terms of football and how your philosophy has been developed. And I think you can obviously answer this from either your point of view or from being a Red Bull Salzburg coach. Can you give us a brief outline as to your sort of playing philosophy, and then with that in mind, how do you measure the effectiveness of that playing philosophy on the pitch? So kind of two-pronged question really, but I think some of the listeners will be interested in number one, how how you play, how your teams play, how Salzburg play. Obviously, you can answer that how you like, and then how do you measure that on the pitch? How do you know your teams have delivered what you expect from them?
My personal philosophy, it's very hard to describe. Martin from the side who's working with me at Spielverlagerung, we coined it organic football because might be sounding strange from a tactical analyst for some, but I'm very focused on the players. I'm very focused on player development, of understanding and coaching the players, and obviously them understanding the game of football regardless of style. So it's very important for me to develop players to understand in a given moment, in a given situation, how ideally to react to the situation. And there is no specific style I'm a big fan of, because when I was coaching amateurs, I was coaching adults the last 2 years, and we were playing a very, very possession-focused style.
Okay.
We had probably a few games with more than 85% possession, very extreme at times, because on amateur level, it's also even better to tire the opponent very fast and to keep yourself in shape. So that was one of the main reasons to do it, additionally to the players and their strengths and weaknesses. Now at Red Bull, it's different. The core of our philosophy is the pressing and the transition game. So we had games where we played really, really good, but we had maybe 38 or 42% possession. Although obviously, as you know, possession is not the best predictor to if you're playing good or bad football. So in the measuring of our effectiveness, we do use it in some ways, in specific ways. I can't talk about the exact ways because it's obviously a Red Bull secret. But if you know the packing?
Yep.
Okay, we have some kind of own version of packing already developed at the club. We develop things because we have tracking data from the own club and using LPM systems and not GPS systems. So it's very good to make your own metrics, and we're doing that. We're developing that. That's part of my job role, of my job outline, because as a qualitative analyst, I'm not bound to the under 18s. I'm bound to the whole academy, and it's just 3 of us who are doing this at the academy.
Okay. That's interesting you say that. So obviously you're
Bobby's not on.
Yeah, well, yeah. Obviously, for those who don't know, Bobby wrote an article about the packing metrics, saying how potentially there were other metrics that could basically come up with the same result. But I mean, it's from a coaching point of view, the idea of measuring essentially breaking lines, receiving in between lines, receiving in different spaces on the pitch. Is that basically where you're going with those metrics?
Yes, but also stuff which is very focused on individual players, on their ability and how they can coach. For instance, one project we are working on is basically focusing on, is the player available to do specific actions in specific moments, and how fast does he get into the situations and how well does he do it? It's one of the projects we're currently working on. As you can see, I cannot give more detail, but that's the general idea of what we're doing and what we're trying to make out of the tracking data.
Okay, great. I mean, yeah, of course, we're not expecting you to give away kind of trade secrets with Salzburg. I mean, I'd be interested to know from that point of view, obviously with the data not being readily available to compare against other clubs, how do you benchmark your under 18s then? So if you've got players who are, let's use the packing metric as an example. So let's say there's a player who's receiving in between the lines, what you believe is a high number of times. How do you benchmark that against other teams' players, or do you not bother? Is it not important to you?
When clubs are playing against us, we often ask them if they are ready to use the systems also. So they get the system from us and can use it. So we get data from them too. Also, we can look over the years, because it's an academy. We can look how does the under 15, under 16, or 18 fare, and how do they fare compared to the years before. And obviously over the years, over the teams, also over the training. So we also can create test games with our players in the academy, we can measure tracking data and we can compare it over the years, how it develops for individual players, but also how the teams just fare within that, and if they had success or not.
Tracking data in training?
Yes, every training or nearly every training is getting tracked on field.
Can I, this might be probing trade secrets, but can I ask how you're using training data in any way that's different from how you might use it in games?
Our conditioning coach, Eibenberger, I think I mentioned him on Twitter already.
Yeah.
He uses it to create an algorithm for the players, how they're getting fatigued in training and over the weeks. So for injury prevention is very important. And we also use it to look at specific, how's it called?
Team setups?
No, different training loads and different loads we put on specific players in the training in different drills. So we can even sometimes deduce by the physical tracking data some tactical things for individual players, but also the physical stuff. And then we can use this for coaching. So it's a little bit different than a game because we can change the design of the session and the design of the load and look at how it changes in the which points.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. I think, I mean, that kind of takes us into the next question that we wanted to ask you, really, which was, I mean, I watched your presentation online on YouTube from the Inspire event that you were at, and you were outlining your coaching philosophy and your methods within sessions. You know, how you want to work with the players and what outcomes you want to get from your training sessions. And again, I was wondering whether, I mean, it's interesting you say that all the sessions are filmed. Do you use that for yourself to measure the effectiveness of your coaching sessions, the outcomes that you get from the players? Is that something you do?
Yes, we're in constant discourse with the players, with the other coaching members, but also we're looking at the training not only to deduce how the players fared in training, but also how we did in training. And you can look at every training we were able to look into it and maybe look if we should have changed some aspects of the drill, maybe some rules, or maybe just field dimensions, and to create a better coaching effect on the players.
Okay. Is there anything that you do in terms of looking at coaching behaviors? I mean, there's a few systems that I've seen in place. I know that the Double Pass, a Belgian company, use a system to analyze coaching behaviors, the interaction between the coach and the players. I know that there's Chris Cushion at Loughborough has been developing a system as well, and I know the FA do a lot in terms of the coach education system about looking into ball rolling time and which methods of coaching are used with the players more often than others. Is there anything like that where you assess your own coaching behaviors?
Yes and no. I don't think it's as methodical as you just described, but some things, for instance, the ball rolling time, basically the net time of the training, is automatically measured through the tracking data.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, in terms of, there's a lot of talk, probably rightly, on how to integrate quite in-depth analysis, data, tactics theory into that on-pitch stuff. How do you see that developing going forward? I mean, obviously you've mentioned the tracking data, which is really interesting. You using that even at academy level. That's obviously something that's a few years ago people would have been surprised by that kind of integration of analysis. What do you think is the next step? Where's that going in terms of on-pitch training?
Just specifically for the training?
Well, and matches, yeah.
Okay, obviously, if I don't think the on-ball data, the event data from Opta is, I think you can do even more with that. So I don't think that with tracking data they become obsolete. That's just the first point, because I think there's still things to get out of that. But obviously, if you get tracking data, there's a ton of things you can do, and I think it would be very interesting to measure tactical behavior and also technical quality in the matches, compare it to training sessions, and then deduce which coaching effects you can change, which you can create for the players, which are important to create, but also how the players fare compared to, in training, to the game. So maybe you can even deduce some psychological stuff based on that. But obviously it's very important to look what's important in the game and how well do we simulate it in the training. And how well do we simulate it for individual player development.
Are you looking at the tracking data yourself, or do you have a dedicated data analyst at Red Bull?
There's a video analyst is getting the data out of the tracking data together with the company that provides the system.
Yeah.
And then together with him and the conditioning coach, we are able to look into the data in which regards we think it's important.
Okay, so there was an interesting conversation that I was not involved with on Twitter this week about the uses of tactical analysis and data analysis and how they might come together. Do you have any specific thoughts in your view about where each is appropriate, where one part might be inappropriate, where they work together, where they don't work well together? I know it's very open, but...
I think they work together well in everything, and you can use it for everything. It just depends on how you use exactly. Some players are very, very open and very interested in their qualitative data, and some are able to really talk about football in a very abstract and deep way and explicitly, and with others it's less. So it really depends, as usual, on the players if you want to use it in coaching, and it depends on the resources you have, the human resources you have, and just the people who work there. So I think in general, data analysis and tactical analysis, there's no discrepancy between them. I think they belong together.
But I mean in terms of not what you're coaching to your players, but in terms of how you understand and how you analyze the game.
I think it's very important that the coaches and data analysts work very well together, because the coaches have to give feedback to the data analyst what they want to find out, how it's possible to operationalize it and how to standardize it, while the data analyst is looking at how to make it valuable, how to make it relevant, how to visualize it, and obviously how to give the feedback back to the coaches from what they exactly ask for, and together develop more quality in terms of what you're measuring and how you're measuring it. So I think it's very important to have coaching staff who's interacting with the data analysts.
So what do you think from a data perspective is very interesting from a coaching perspective but isn't being done publicly right now?
There's a ton. For instance, how players is getting free, in which moment, in which positions, if they have individual player tendencies. I think this is a very, very important point that I rarely see in tactical analysis talked about, and I never saw so far really detailed talked about in data analysis.
Yeah, good answer.
Okay, no, great. I mean, I had a really good conversation with an analyst at a club last week about where he saw that communication that you talked about. Do you see the future of data integrating with the coaching side? Do you see that coaches are going to have to become more familiar with the way of reading data, the way of seeing statistics, or do you feel that it's up to the data guys and the performance analysts at clubs to be able to communicate that better? Or do you see perhaps maybe the performance analyst guys being, they're a member of the coaching staff, they're in the change room, they're on the bench with the coaches, with the managers? How do you see that developing, that relationship?
I think to some extent coaches have to understand data, and the data analysts have to understand football, probably to a bigger extent. But obviously the coach does not have to know statistics in depth or to program himself, but he should understand the meaning of the stats and the data, so he just can give feedback properly. But it's obviously the role of the data analyst to give the information to the coaching staff in a way they're able to use it efficiently and without being time consuming, without being consuming in terms of they have to adapt to things which aren't part of their core business.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously the coaching staff still should be able to do the same for the data analysts in terms of football. They should be able to describe the football actions they want to be measured, to get measured in a way it's able to make an algorithm, a metric or whatever, to measure it. So I think coaches have to be very clear in the language and be able to describe it simply, but also correctly, to be able to work together with the data analyst. So it's a responsibility of both.
And is that just a matter of communication, or do you think data analysts should be going on coaching courses, or how should they be learning about the game? What should they be learning about the game in order to communicate more effectively?
Coaching course is a good idea, but I think you can learn about the game in different ways too, just by being able to discuss things with the coaching staff and getting educated by the coaching staff, especially if it's a very competent coaching staff. I think that is already a big step if they're showing interest in it. And also the coaching staff being interested in talking with them about football, and then developing together just a base they can use together about football, and obviously about data and the next step. Okay. So I think it's mainly communication and education through that.
Okay. We had an interesting question from an ex-Analytics FC member, Tom Warville, on Twitter. He wanted us to ask you, if you put yourself in the shoes of a director of football, you're at a new club, you want to shape the analysis department, the analytics department, what's the first change you'd implement within the tactical analysis department at a club?
It depends what's there and what's not.
Interesting. Okay, all right. We'll give you two different scenarios then. So you turn up at a Champions League club who have a big staff, lots of resources, and then alternatively at a small club with maybe one analyst or two, one analyst full time, maybe a part-time analyst helping out. So yeah, the first one, so loads of resources. How would you shape that analysis department?
If I have a big club, I would obviously invest much more in research, because you're able to do research because you have the human resource, you have the infrastructure. At a small club, I guess scouting would be a very important point, to invest in scouting. Also in scouting, really be able to suit and adapt to our team. Also tactical scouting of players, and obviously opposition scouting would be very important at a small club, whereas in a big club I expect that to be there already. And then you have obviously the possibilities to get tracking data, to make analysis of the trainings, and obviously doing research. So I think this would be the difference between these two scenarios.
It's interesting you say about the research and development. I was speaking with someone at the German FA. I'm not sure how much interaction you've had with them since joining Salzburg. They've got the research center at Cologne. Is there any way that clubs are able to tap into that, or do you have to do your own R&D?
There are always connections and interactions between universities and clubs, not only Cologne. But for instance, our video analyst, he studied there. He worked for the Project 2006, I think it was called. Yeah. The video analysis team for the national team. He did a very good job from what I gathered, and he's doing a great job at our club too. And through him, for instance, I was also able to get information on how they work, what they do. And obviously, clubs have connections to universities and get information about these things from them too. Obviously, you won't get all the information, you won't get all the data they do, but you get to get general idea, and if you want to invest, you're able to do it and copy it for your own club.
Be interested also to get your thoughts on an insight into a Twitter discussion that we saw the other day. Two schools of thought. The first one was that there's very little edge to be had in terms of coaching, in terms of improving the standard of or the quality of the coach at first team level. So clubs should concentrate on recruiting the best players. And the second was that the transfer fees these days have gone so high and skyrocketed for teams that they should invest more in backroom staff, their academies, the coaching, where the costs really haven't risen that much. You can get more quality for your dollar. So I mean, essentially, so basically, staff and specialist coaches are undervalued in the current market. What's your position on that? I assume as a coach, you probably take the second, but perhaps not.
Can you name and shame who was on each side?
You could. It's public knowledge. It was back on Twitter. You can go back and research. I think it was a conversation between Marek and somebody else. I can't remember who the other person was, to be honest. I didn't make a note of it.
I'll take Marek's view.
Right.
I haven't read it, but
okay.
That's what I wanted to say too.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, it was an interesting discussion. It went back and forth for quite a while, so I think there was a few people that jumped in with with their comments. It's a very interesting idea. For me, from my point of view, I believe that right now there's a bigger difference than there ever has been between the best coach in the Premier League and the worst coach in the Premier League, and that advantage that you can get from having a better coach is the biggest it's ever been. The gap's there, I think.
God, you can't just answer your own question, Jeremy.
Oh, I know. But you guys aren't answering it. You're not jumping in. You need to put yourself on the line. So you need to get off that fence.
René, I'll give it to you.
Go for it.
I don't think you can separate these two like that, because there are some players you can really develop very well, where the coaching is important, and these players might be very expensive too. I guess if you have a really, really good coach for a huge talent who already cost a ton, he can develop to get even more important, maybe being even a difference maker on the highest level. If you look at City, I think John Stones, he developed very fast already under Guardiola, and he was already a very expensive player. So I just don't think you can separate like that. Probably coaches are undervalued, and I think there's a ton of small gains you can find, which are not only in scouting, but obviously also in scouting you can find tremendous players who, in the right system, with the right coaching, are able to make the difference if they get coached well.
Yeah, it is, I think, pretty clear that there are some coaches who causally raise the level that their players are playing at. I'm obviously a big Guardiola believer, as is the popular view, and have been that way for a long time, and think that his time at Bayern Munich was absolutely fantastic, and the idea that it was a failure is crazy to me. But still, how quickly John Stones went from looking pretty crap to like one of the best centre backs in the league in the first like 4 or 5 games. It doesn't mean anything, but it is remarkable how much coaching, particularly defensive coaching, can do to make players look better or worse in different systems.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think if you look at Guardiola's impact on teams, it's been the same everywhere he's been. Right now, Clichy, Kolarov and Sanya look like world-class build-up players. It's crazy. Is what he's doing, René? Is that type of coaching? Is that something that other coaches can emulate? Because they haven't so far. Oh, sorry, that's not true. There are a number of coaches that have, but it's not across the board. A lot of clubs haven't changed their philosophy to move in that direction. And I get the impression that potentially it's because it's not understood. The work that he's doing is not understood by other coaches or other clubs, and they've decided not to go that way, and they go for an easier style of play or an easier style to implement with their teams. Do you get that feeling or not?
I'm not sure if they're consciously decided against it, or just they think it's not possible with the players and the coaches they have to do this, because it's not only a matter of just develop the player and the team. It's a hard job to be a good coach, develop players who are already on a high level, and to develop teams that are already on a high level. So it might be more an execution problem than a problem in terms of decision making.
Okay, interesting. A few of these the new kind of tactical ideas. I mean, we mentioned it before about the mixture between the kind of tactical theory stuff and the data. It'd be really interesting to get your view on. I mean, we've been introduced through yourself and through some of the other tactical writers online into tiki-taka, the false nine, juego de posición, gegenpressing, zone 14, the half spaces. I read a really good article the other day by Judah Davis on blind side, coaching the blind side, both in offense and defense, which was really interesting. They're all really great developments in terms of tactical analysis. What's the next tactical innovation? What should we expect next? What's the future of that kind of tactical theory?
Who knows? It's very hard to predict something which isn't yet invented. I probably think that teams will start to use the goalkeeper even more in build-up.
Okay.
I think positional changes might become more of a thing again. Also, I think the teams might start to play with more lines. So instead of a 4-4-2, like Schmidt does with a 4-2-2-2, and because the players are physically more capable of covering more distance and playing with more tempo, more intensity. So these might be things, maybe a different style of building up, more asymmetrical shapes in build-up and in defense. So I think these might be the things which will be developed next in terms of tactical innovations.
Okay, great. One final question, just because we missed it earlier, and I think it's quite an interesting one from Ryan Barr here at Opta. He wanted to know what your thoughts were on crossing specifically. So we talked about your philosophy and how it was you're very flexible in terms of what you teach the players. You're not too stuck in a certain style of play. But there are certain elements that, especially within the data or analytics community, where people say, no, that's an inefficient way of attacking, or that's an inefficient way of playing. Crossing being one of the biggest ones. Is that something that you take into account within your philosophy, or are you open to that? So yeah, specifically with crossing, but also with some of the other areas that kind of the analytics community say, no, that shouldn't be. That clubs teams should look to stay away from that aspect.
I think at Red Bull already 6 years ago or so, or maybe even longer, crossing is a no-go. There are just some specific crosses that are allowed.
Okay.
I think if you play against a team of very small players and you have a great crosser and a great center forward with a great heading ability, it might be a way to go for specific games. But in general, I'm not a big fan of crossing because I don't think it's efficient. But obviously there are different types of crosses. Some can be efficient. In some situations, the effects it creates, the consequences for the opponent or for the consecutive actions can also be helpful. So as a coach, you have to keep this in mind and maybe deduce rules, which type of crosses you want to see in which situations, and then use it for specific opponents or in specific game situations. So I think I'm not that rigid, but I really dislike specific type of crosses, like the long, high crosses from the sides in a very advanced part of the field. So these are things I would not coach my players to.
Okay.
God, it's so nice to hear a coach say that. I think you're completely right that there are different types of crosses that work and don't work. I was speaking to Ben Torvani, ex-Analytics FC as well, about this recently, talking about how when we see that crosses have such a low success rate, it's because we're banging in a ton of crosses into one pot and then just seeing that generally they really don't work out. Whereas in reality, it seems pretty plausible that free headers are a very, very, very big scoring opportunity. I was watching some Adi Hutter Young Boys recently, not just Hipster, but on the recommendation of Ted, whose Young Boys always seem to find a free header in the area. I think it's because they're counterattacking so quickly, because they're moving so quickly. I don't really know how it manifests, how it comes about. But I'm a tiny bit skeptical of the idea that crossing is always rubbish. But at the same time, that is kind of the side of the debate which I think makes most sense.
So, I mean, similarly, Rene, how a great example is someone like Andros Townsend or Coutinho, who consistently get battered on Twitter for taking the decision to shoot from distance. Is that something as well that you would coach your players not to do? And if so, how do you change their decision making? How do you get them to take more efficient shots? What's the process for a coach to do that?
Yeah, it's something I also, like crosses, would in general not encourage to do. There are some situations where I think it's acceptable to do it. And in terms of coaching it, if you create games where there are specific rules in which zones and which situations they are allowed to score, you can implicitly force them to learn the more efficient situations to score. For instance, what I did, I marked out two parts of the box and a part outside of the box, from which, if they scored from there, the goal will count for 3 goals, and the other part will count 2, and then it will count for 1. And outside of it, even if you score, it's 0. So because of that, they will always try to get in the box, to get free in the box, get free in these specific zones, to get a shot from there, while still being able to decide for themselves if they're not able to find the best shooting position, they still get points if they shoot from still efficient zones, and they can decide by themselves. But also the players are forced to move into these zones, forced to move into the box, and forced to take up the best position possible, even if they're not on the ball. So this is a type of drill I used to do this for my players. Because of my amateurs team at the first year, we had massive problems because of that.
No, that's really interesting. I think there are a lot of coaches that listen into the podcast, and sometimes the feedback that I receive potentially is that some of the work that goes on within analytics and even within the tactical theory is potentially not applicable on the pitch. I mean, is that something you've looked to do consciously? Is that, taking on board that kind of data and saying, look, how can I change the way my players play to make them more efficient?
Obviously, if I find something that's interesting for me from the data for the tactical theory, I try to deduce why is it like that, which are the situations where I see it and can understand how it happens, and then obviously from that point on, I try to find out what's the better solution and how can we come to the better solution and why. And that's then a way of thinking, which is the start for creating a training drill for them.
No, great. No, really interesting insight. That's all the questions that we got lined up for you, Rene. And you really appreciate your time coming on the show, because I mean, like I say, it's really interesting to have a coach come on board who knows the data as well. So hopefully there have been some really good insights for our listeners. Joel?
Not just coming on, but coming on twice. People who are listening in now won't know, but we had a technological cock up the first time round, so this is the second attempt. Yeah, I mean, I completely echo that. I think when I am looking at tactics people on Twitter, Rene stands out for me as, if I were to pick one person who not just understands, that's quite patronising, but who really engages with the fact that a lot of football is random, and that the role, I think, of tactics is to deduce patterns which really exist and really matter to the game, and I think Rene does that consistently. So thank you very much. Rene, do you want to plug yourself?
No, it's fine.
Alright, well, you can follow Rene at Rene Maric, and also on Spielverlagerung on the English and German websites, which will be linked in the description below. Thank you very much for listening to this rendition of the Analytics FC podcast. For the next one, we're going to have Rory Campbell, the technical scout at West Ham, talking to him about all things Premier League and transfers. And then after that, we have Zarius Desai, of first team analyst at Brentford fame, talking to him hopefully a little bit about the inner workings of Matthew Benham's sides, the use of analytics at first team and academy level, etc, etc. So we look forward to seeing you then.